It was a quiet morning. The sun was shining, but the air was still cold. A small cafe on the corner of the street had just opened. People were walking in to grab coffee before work. The smell of fresh bread and hot drinks filled the air. In the back corner of the cafe, an old man sat alone. His name was Raymond Blackwood. He wore a dark green jacket and a simple black cap. His hands were rough. His face had deep lines, showing years of hard life. He sat very still, holding a small cup of black coffee. He didn't talk. He just watched people. Some customers looked at him with confusion. "Who is this man?" They whispered. "Why is he sitting here alone for so long?" Raymond didn't look poor, but he didn't look rich either. He looked like a man with stories, but no one dared to ask him. 3 teenagers walked in, laughing loudly. They were wearing shiny jackets and expensive shoes. One of them looked at Raymond and made a face. "Hey, Grandpa," he shouted. "You lost?" The other boys laughed. One of them walked over to Raymond and waved a hand in front of his face. Raymond didn't say a word. He just looked at the boy with calm eyes. The boy suddenly felt cold and stepped back. "Whatever, old man," the team muttered and walked away. The waitress, a young woman named Lena, felt sorry for Raymond. She had seen him come in every morning for the past week. He never caused trouble. He always ordered the same thing, 1 cup of coffee. He tipped well, smiled politely, and then sat quietly for over an hour. But today felt different. Around 10:30 a.m., the door burst open. 3 police officers walked in. Their boots were loud on the floor. Everyone in the cafe turned to look. The lead officer, a tall man with a serious face, walked up to the counter. "We got a report," he said. "Someone matching a suspect's description is sitting in this cafe." The cafe owner, a nervous man named Mr. Holtz, quickly looked around. His eyes landed on Raymond. "He's been sitting there for a long time," Mr. Holtz whispered. "Didn't buy anything today. Just sits there, every day." The officer looked at Raymond. "That's him?" he asked. Mr. Holtz nodded. "Could be. I don't know." The officers moved toward Raymond. Lena stepped in their way. "Wait, he's not done anything wrong." "Step aside, miss," the officer said. "Let us do our job." Raymond didn't move. He watched the officers coming toward him. "Sir," the lead officer said, "stand up. We need to talk." Raymond replied calmly, "I'm just drinking coffee." "Now," the second officer shouted. Before Raymond could respond, one officer grabbed his arm. The other pulled the chair away. Raymond fell to the floor with a heavy thud. Gasps filled the room. Customers stood frozen. No one helped. "What are you doing?" Lena shouted. "He's done nothing wrong." "He matches a description," the officer said sharply. "Could be dangerous." "Dangerous," Lena said, her voice shaking. "He's an old man." Raymond slowly looked up. His hands shook slightly, but his eyes stayed calm. "You're making a mistake," he said softly. "We'll decide that," the officer replied, pulling out handcuffs. As the officers bent down to grab his hands, something fell from Raymond's jacket pocket. It was a small, silver military dog tag. It slid across the floor and stopped near the foot of a young man sitting nearby. The young man picked it up. His face turned pale. "Wait," he said, walking toward the officers. "Do you know who this is?" The officer rolled his eyes. "A suspect?" "No," the young man said. "This man trained me. He's Sergeant Raymond Blackwood." The cafe went silent. "Who?" one officer asked. The young man stood tall. "He trained some of the deadliest soldiers in the U.S. military. He's a hero." The officer laughed. "Prove it." The young man pulled out his phone. "I will." Raymond looked up and smiled faintly. He didn't need saving, but it was time the world remembered who he really was. The cafe was completely silent. Everyone's eyes were on Raymond, still on the floor, and the young man who had picked up the dog tag. "My name is James Carter," the young man said loudly. "I served in the army. This man trained me and many others. He's not just a soldier, he's a legend." The officer looked annoyed. "I don't care who he trained. He matches a suspect's description, and we have to follow orders." "But he's innocent," James protested. "That dog tag proves it." The officer shook his head and turned to Raymond. Get up, now. Raymond slowly pushed himself up from the floor. His knees were weak, but his eyes were sharp. You can check my ID, he said calmly. We'll do that at the station, the officer replied, grabbing Raymond by the arm again. Lena, the waitress, stepped forward. This isn't right. He didn't do anything. Miss, said the second officer, if you don't want trouble, stay back. Another officer pulled out the handcuffs. Raymond didn't fight. He simply held out his hands. The cold metal clicked around his wrists. He didn't look angry. He didn't look afraid. He looked disappointed. The other customers began to whisper. Are they arresting him? Why? Didn't that guy say he's a war hero? One woman started filming with her phone. This isn't right, she whispered. As Raymond was pulled toward the door, he stumbled. One officer shoved him forward. Move, he barked. Careful with him, James shouted. He's injured. He walks with a cane. I said stay out of this, the officer warned. Raymond was dragged outside. The cold air hit his face, but he didn't complain. People gathered on the sidewalk. Some had seen the video already. Some were just curious. All of them looked confused. An older man in the crowd stepped forward. That's Sergeant Blackwood. I served with him in Iraq. The officer ignored him. Raymond was pushed toward the police car. Inside the cafe, James looked at Lena. I can't let this happen, he said. What can we do? Lena asked, her voice shaking. I know someone, James said. Someone high up. He pulled out his phone and began dialing. Outside, Raymond was being questioned beside the police car. Where were you 2 nights ago? The officer asked. At home, Raymond answered simply. Can anyone prove that? My neighbor, or my dog, he said with a hint of a smile. The officer frowned. You think this is funny? Raymond looked him in the eye. No, I think it's sad. Why's that? The officer asked. Because you wear that badge, Raymond said, but you don't wear any honor. The officer was silent for a moment. Then he looked away. Just then, the officer's radio crackled. Dispatch to Unit 14. We've received a call from a military contact. Urgent message regarding a Sergeant Raymond Blackwood. The officer grabbed the radio. Say again? The voice on the other end replied. Repeat. Do not process the man in custody. He's a retired master sergeant. Trained Tier 1 forces. His ID has been confirmed. Release him immediately. The officer's face turned pale. His eyes slowly moved to Raymond. James came running out of the cafe, phone still in hand. They picked up, he said. They know who he is now. The lead officer looked embarrassed. He turned to the others. Uncuff him. Now. One of the officers rushed to remove the handcuffs. I'm sorry, sir, the lead officer said. We didn't know. Raymond rubbed his wrists. You didn't care to know. He walked back toward the cafe. The crowd parted to make way. No one laughed now. No one whispered. They all just watched in shock. James stood beside him. Sir, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Raymond nodded. It's not your fault, son. Lena met him at the door. Her eyes were full of tears. I'm so sorry, she said. You stood up when no one else did. Raymond replied gently. Thank you. Just then, a black car pulled up beside the cafe. A man in uniform stepped out and saluted. Sir, he said, General Davis wants to see you. He sent me to bring you to the base. He said, it's urgent. Raymond looked at James. James smiled. They finally remember who you are. Raymond gave a small nod and walked toward the car. People watched in silence as the door closed behind him and the car drove away. But no one in that cafe would ever forget what they saw that day. By the time Raymond's car reached the military base, the video from the cafe had already gone viral. Thousands of people were watching it on their phones. It showed everything. The officers dragging Raymond from his chair, the young man shouting his name, the dog tag sliding across the floor, and finally, the moment when everyone learned who Raymond really was. Hashtag Justice for Sergeant Raymond started trending on every social media platform. News reporters rushed to the cafe to interview anyone who was there. Cameras flashed. Microphones were everywhere. Lena stood near the window, looking overwhelmed. She never thought her quiet cafe would turn into a national story, but deep down she felt proud for standing up for a man who deserved respect. James stayed by her side. "The world knows now," he said. "They know the truth." Still, Lena said, "I can't believe how badly he was treated. What if we hadn't spoken up?" James looked at her seriously. "Then they would have locked up a hero." At the military base, Raymond was greeted like royalty. Soldiers stood straight and saluted as he walked by. Some even held back tears. They knew the stories. Many had trained under him or heard of his legendary methods. An officer guided him to a private meeting room. There, a man in a crisp uniform stood waiting, General Davis. "Sergeant Blackwood," the general said, walking forward. "It's good to see you." Raymond smiled slightly. "Been a long time, sir." The general nodded. "Too long. I watched the video. I can't believe what they did to you." Raymond looked down at his hands. "It's not the first time someone judged me by how I look." "Well, it will be the last," General Davis said firmly. "We're releasing an official statement. The entire country will know the truth." Raymond said nothing. He wasn't looking for attention, but deep down, a part of him was tired of being forgotten. The general continued, "But that's not the only reason I called you here." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Oh, there's a mission," General Davis said. "A problem only someone like you can help solve." Raymond leaned back. "I'm retired. I know. But this mission, it's personal." Raymond looked at him closely. "How personal?" The general took out a folder and handed it over. Inside were photos, maps, and one name written in bold: Colonel Mason Vance. Raymond's face changed. His hand tightened on the folder. "Mason's still alive?" he asked. "Yes," the general replied, "and he's gone rogue." Raymond didn't say a word. "You trained him," the general added. "Now, we need you to stop him." Meanwhile, back at the cafe, the officers who arrested Raymond were facing public outrage. The police chief gave a press conference. "We regret what happened," he said. "The officers have been placed under investigation. This does not represent who we are. But the damage was done." People from all over the country were sending messages of support for Raymond. Veterans posted stories online, sharing how he had saved their lives or trained them to survive. One video showed a young soldier crying as he held up his badge. "If it weren't for Sergeant Blackwood, I wouldn't be alive today," he said. Even the mayor called Raymond personally. "We owe you an apology," she said, "and a medal." But Raymond didn't answer the phone. He was already deep into the mission briefing with General Davis. Late that night, James sat at home watching the news. His phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You did the right thing today. RB." James smiled. He knew who it was from. Across the city, Lena closed up the cafe. She wiped the table slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. As she turned off the lights, she whispered, "Come back soon, Mr. Blackwood. We miss you already." Back at the base, Raymond looked at the photo of Colonel Mason again. "He was my best student," he said quietly. The general nodded. "Now he's the country's biggest threat." Raymond closed the folder and stood up. "Tell me where he is." The general gave a small smile. "That's the Raymond I remember." As Raymond walked out of the room, soldiers turned and saluted again. This time, they weren't just honoring a war hero. They were sending America's deadliest trainer back into the field. Raymond sat alone in the dark briefing room. In front of him were maps, documents, and a laptop showing satellite images. On the screen, a red circle glowed over a remote forest area in Eastern Europe. That's where Colonel Mason Vance was hiding. Raymond leaned forward, staring at the screen. His mind was racing. He had trained Mason himself. Back then, Mason was sharp, focused, and loyal. But something had changed. Something had broken. General Davis walked in with a serious face. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Raymond? You haven't been on a mission in 5 years." Raymond didn't look away from the screen. "If Mason has gone rogue, no one else can stop him." The general nodded. We'll give you full control. Choose your team, your gear, and your method. But you must be careful. He's not just smart, he's unpredictable now. Raymond stood up slowly. I taught him everything he knows, but not everything I know. Later that night, Raymond walked into a special hangar. Inside was a sleek black helicopter, waiting with engines warm. A soldier handed him a folder. Here's the list of top operatives available. You can choose 4. Raymond looked over the names, but he already knew who he wanted. James Carter, the young man from the cafe, now serving in special ops. Elena Cruz, a tech expert and sniper trained by Raymond years ago. Marcus Tank Rhodes, heavy weapons and hand-to-hand combat specialist. Dr. Kim Lee, field medic and intelligence officer. He pointed to the names. Call them. Tell them to gear up. We leave in 2 hours. Meanwhile, in a hidden base deep in the woods, Colonel Mason Vance watched the news on an old TV. It showed clips of Raymond being dragged out of the cafe. Then it cut to footage of him walking into the military base. Mason smiled coldly. So, they're bringing him back, he whispered. A man next to him, wearing dark clothes and a mask, asked, What should we do, sir? Mason stood up. We move now, before he finds us. Raymond won't stop unless I stop him first. Back at the airfield, James arrived in uniform, a surprised look on his face. Sir, you called me. Raymond nodded. I saw how you stood out for me. Now I need you to stand beside me. James saluted. Yes, sir. Next came Elena, Marcus, and Dr. Kim. One by one, they all gathered around the helicopter. Raymond looked at them. This is not a rescue. It's not a war. This is personal. Mason was one of us, but now, he's dangerous. We go in quiet. We find him. We stop him, without being seen. Understood? The team all nodded. No one asked questions. They trusted Raymond completely. As the helicopter lifted into the night sky, Raymond looked down at the glowing city lights below. He thought about Lena and the cafe. He thought about how quickly the world had judged him. And he thought about Mason, the student who once called him father. Hours later, the helicopter hovered over the drop zone, a snowy, frozen forest. The team jumped one by one, landing silently in the dark woods. They moved like shadows, checking for traps and signs of movement. Dr. Kim whispered, There's a heat signal 2 clicks east. Raymond nodded. Move slow. No noise. Eyes open. As they moved through the forest, a strange feeling crept over them. They were being watched. Suddenly, a small red dot appeared on James's chest. Sniper! Raymond shouted, tackling James to the ground just as a bullet flew past. The team hit the snow, taking cover behind trees. Fall back, Marcus shouted. They knew we were coming. Ambush, Elena said, firing a warning shot toward the trees. Raymond grabbed his earpiece. Hold position. Don't fire unless you see a target. Then a voice came through the radio. Deep, cold, familiar. Hello, Sergeant Blackwood. Did you miss me? Raymond froze. Mason, he said quietly. I thought they'd send someone else. The voice continued. But I see they still believe in old ghosts. Raymond's hand tightened on his rifle. This ends tonight, he said. Mason laughed. You trained me too well, old man. Let's see if the teacher can beat the student. The radio went silent. Raymond looked at his team. We're not retreating, he said. He wants a fight. Let's give him one. But deep inside he knew this mission had just become a deadly game, and only one of them would walk out alive. Snow fell gently as Raymond and his team crouched behind trees. The forest was cold, quiet, and dangerous. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a trap. Mason had spoken through the radio. He knew Raymond was coming. And worse, he had set the battlefield. Raymond looked at his team. Everyone okay? James nodded, breathing fast. That sniper almost got me. You stayed calm, Raymond said. That's good. Elena checked her sniper rifle. They're close. I saw movement up on the ridge. Marcus, Raymond said, circle around to the east. Kim, stay with James and cover the rear. Elena, with me. They split into 2 units, moving like shadows through the trees. Every crunch in the snow sounded loud. Every breath felt heavy. Raymond moved carefully, his eyes sharp. He knew Mason's tactics. Mason always used traps, distractions, and fake paths. But Raymond was the one who taught him all of that. On the ridge, Mason stood watching with binoculars. He wore a black winter coat and gloves. His face was colder than the snow around him. A man beside him asked, "Sir, do we attack now?" Mason didn't answer. His eyes were on the trees. "No, let him come to me." "But Raymond Blackwood is the only man who ever beat me," Mason said. "I want to see if he still can." He turned and walked toward a hidden bunker built into the hill. "Prepare the last phase. If he survives the forest, he won't survive what's inside." Down below, Marcus crept through the trees alone. His breath made small clouds in the air. He held his rifle close, scanning for movement. Suddenly, a wire snapped under his boot. "Trap!" he shouted, diving to the side. A loud boom exploded behind him, just far enough not to kill, but close enough to hurt. Raymond heard it. He turned. They got Marcus. Elena cursed. "It's an ambush." Raymond grabbed his radio. "Team, fall back to Point Delta. Regroup now." But then, Mason's voice came through again. "Still trying to protect everyone, Sergeant? That's your weakness." Raymond didn't reply. Mason continued. "You trained me to follow orders, but I learned something better, to lead my own way. And now I'll show you what I've become." Raymond gritted his teeth. "Enough games, Mason." "You want to stop me?" Mason said. "Then come find me." The radio went silent. Back at the regroup point, the team gathered. Marcus limped in with smoke on his jacket. "I'm fine," he grunted. "Just a scratch." Dr. Kim treated his arm. "You were lucky. A step closer, and that would have been your last mission." Raymond looked at his team. They were tired, cold, and unsure. He spoke calmly. "Listen to me. Mason wants us scared. He wants us confused. But we're not just any team. We're trained. We're smart. And we have something he doesn't: honor." James looked up. "What do we do next?" "We go straight to him," Raymond said. "No more hiding. No more waiting." Elena asked, "But how do we find his bunker?" Raymond pulled out a map. "When I trained Mason, I taught him to always build near 3 things: high ground, running water, and an escape route. There's only one spot on this map that fits." He pointed to a hill near a frozen river. "That's where he is." The team moved fast. They crossed ice, climbed rocks, and crawled through snow. When they reached the hill, they saw it, a hidden door built into the ground, covered with snow and branches. Raymond stepped forward. "We're going in." Elena looked nervous. "This could be a trap." Raymond nodded. "It is, but we're walking in anyway." They opened the door slowly and went down metal stairs. Inside was dark and cold. The hallway was lined with lights and cameras. As they moved deeper, alarms suddenly began to scream. Red lights flashed. Steel doors slammed shut behind them. They were trapped. A voice echoed through the hallway. "Welcome, Sergeant Blackwood," Mason said over the speaker. "I've been waiting." Raymond stepped forward. "This ends now, Mason. You don't have to do this." Mason laughed. "But I do. You see, the world threw you away, just like it threw me away. But I'm not staying quiet anymore. I'm building something better, and no one can stop me." James shouted, "You betrayed everything you were trained to do." Mason's voice turned cold. "I didn't betray it. I evolved." Suddenly, steel walls began to move. Gas hissed from the ceiling. "Move!" Raymond shouted. "Elena, disable the systems. Kim, help Marcus. James, with me." As the team scrambled, Raymond looked around. This was more than a trap. It was a test. And if they failed, none of them would make it out alive.